What's up, everyone? Today, we are cracking the code on the original boss music, the stuff that's been giving people goosebumps for hundreds of years. We're talking about sacred music from the Baroque era. Let's dive in. So, you know that feeling, right? You're watching a movie or playing a game, the final battle is about to start, and then bam, this massive old school choir music kicks in, and it just feels huge. Ever stopped and wondered why that is? Why does that kind of music sound so intense? Well, here's the secret. It is absolutely not an accident. That epic feeling was totally planned. The composers who wrote this music hundreds of years ago were basically the original sound designers for real life, crafting these insane emotional experiences that were meant to stick with you. All right, so let's pop the hood and look at the blueprint. What makes this music tick? Think of it like the game engine, the source code that makes it so powerful and hits so hard. What are the rules of this musical world? Okay, first things first, the official name for this style is sacred music. Now, the definition is pretty simple. It's just music written for religious purposes. But, and this is the important part, it was designed to make you feel something big. We're talking awe, inspiration, deep, deep emotion. This was music with a serious mission. And the style pretty much owned a specific slice of history called the Baroque period, which ran from about 1600 to 1750. So around 1600, this brand new super dramatic style just appears. Then it hits its absolute peak right around 1685, when legends like Bach and Handel were born. And then, things started to change around 1750. So what was the Baroque vibe like? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like turning all the settings in a video game up to the absolute max. For starters, it was super dramatic. You would get these huge swings from whisper quiet to concert level loud. It was also really ornate, with all these rich, complex melodies weaving around each other. The music had tons of layers, with all the instruments and voices working together. But most important of all, it was expressive. It was built to perfectly match the emotion of whatever the words were saying. Okay, so who was on the team making all this epic sound? It wasn't just one composer sitting in a room. No way. It was a whole crew of musical all-stars, and every single one had a super important job. First up, you've got the choir. You have to think of them as the main army, a huge force of singers laying down this powerful wall of sound foundation. You know that moment when the full choir kicks in? That's the musical equivalent of the entire army charging in a battle. It's the absolute core of that epic feeling. But it wasn't just about that massive sound. You also had the soloists. These were your star players, your main characters. They'd step out from the crowd to deliver the most emotional or important lines. It creates this amazing contrast, right? It's like the camera zooming in from a huge battle scene to a close-up on the hero's face. That jump from the power of the whole army to just one single voice, that's what gets you right in the feels. And finally, rounding out the team, you have the instruments. Think of them as the special effects department. The huge church organ, the strings, the brass instruments. They weren't just playing the melody. They were building the world. They added the texture, the atmosphere, and all the drama. Just like CGI and sound effects make a movie feel immersive and huge. All right, we've met the team, but what were the actual levels they were playing? Well, the music mostly came in two main game modes or formats. And a great way to think about it is like in a video game. You've got your main quest and you've got your side quests. So on one side, you have the Mass. That is your main campaign. It's this massive, often hour-long musical adventure that follows the main story of a church service. But then you have the cantata. That's your side quest. It's shorter, it's more focused on a specific story or idea, and it mixes things up with a bunch of different solos and choruses. Of course, none of this would even exist without the legendary developers who built it all. So let's meet the GOATs, the greatest of all time, the composers who were writing this mind-blowing music. This right here is your Hall of Fame. First up, Johann Sebastian Bach, the undisputed master of complex, overlapping layers. Then you've got George Friedrich Handel, who was the king of the epic blockbuster choir sound. There's also Antonio Vivaldi, a specialist in really vibrant, energetic music. And we have to mention Heinrich Schütz, an early pioneer who pretty much wrote the original playbook for this whole style. So all this happened hundreds of years ago. Why are we still talking about it? What's its legacy? Well, it turns out this boss music formula was so perfect, it never really went away. It's actually pretty wild. You can draw a straight line from then to now. First, these Baroque composers created and perfected this powerful formula for making people feel things. Then, later on, guys like Mozart studied that formula and added their own spin to it. And today, composers writing music for movies and video games are still using the exact same tricks, that mix of a huge choir, a full orchestra, and dramatic contrasts to give us all those epic, goosebump-worthy moments. One source really sums it up perfectly. It says, "The emotional depth and complexity of these compositions shaped the future of Western music." And that is not an exaggeration. The DNA of this music is literally everywhere today. So if you only take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. This was never just dusty old music. For its time, this was the absolute cutting edge. It was high-tech, emotional, blockbuster entertainment. It was designed from the ground up to be powerful, moving, and completely unforgettable. And that kind of makes you wonder, right? What music from your playlist today do you think people will be calling classical 300 years from now? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.